She left you long before you even realized it. Not physically, but emotionally. And that is the wound you cannot name, the absence you cannot trace. You thought everything was fine. You believed that love, once declared, would endure unchallenged. But what if I told you that love never truly dies all at once? That it decays silently, in shadows while you are too distracted, too confident, too asleep to notice? Why didn't you sense it? The moment her laughter stopped being for you. The moment her touch grew colder, mechanical, distant. Was it because you refused to look beneath the surface? Was it because the illusion of closeness was more comfortable than confronting the abyss that had already opened between you? Carl Jung warned us, what you ignore within yourself will dominate you from the shadows. You didn't see her leaving because you didn't see yourself. You didn't acknowledge your own emotional absence, your disconnection, your passivity. And so she began her quiet escape, emotionally severing the bond step by step, while you mistook her silence for stability. But this is not just about her. This is about you, about the unconscious patterns you refuse to confront, about the parts of yourself, the coldness, the avoidance, the fear of true intimacy that you projected onto her, making her the carrier of your own abandonment. Jung called this the dance of the anima, the projection of your inner feminine onto a real woman. But when the real woman no longer reflects your idealized image, the projection collapses. And in that collapse, love often withers. You didn't lose her when she walked out the door. You lost her when you stopped seeing her soul, when you refused to acknowledge her growing disconnection and your own. This is the beginning of the unraveling. The first fracture, invisible yet fatal. You keep asking yourself, how could she leave so suddenly? But the truth is, it wasn't sudden at all. Emotional departure is never an explosion, it is erosion. Slow, silent, almost imperceptible, until nothing is left. Did you notice the moments when she stopped confiding in you? When her eyes no longer lit up when you entered the room? When her sighs grew heavier, more frequent, but you dismissed them as moods rather than messages? We are trained by culture and by ego to overlook these signs, to believe that as long as the contract of the relationship remains intact, the emotional foundation is secure. But Jung knew otherwise. He understood that the unconscious speaks through these subtleties, through body language, tone, and absence. More than words. You failed to see the language of her withdrawal because you had long ago silenced your own emotional instincts. You mistook routine for love, obligation for connection, certainty for intimacy. And here's the most brutal truth. She didn't leave you to hurt you. She left because staying would have meant betraying herself. Her emotional detachment was not an act of cruelty, but of survival. In the absence of being seen, she had to retreat to preserve what remained of her soul. Yet you experienced it as betrayal, abandonment, rejection. Why? Because as Jung warned, your shadow, the repressed parts of yourself, interprets every act of separation as a personal annihilation. The child within you, still longing for unconditional acceptance, screams in protest when intimacy dissolves. But was it really about her? Or was it about what she represented? A mirror that no longer reflected the man you believed yourself to be. This is the nature of unconscious projection. We don't fall in love with people. We fall in love with what they awaken within us. And when they withdraw, it feels like a death, not of the relationship, but of a part of ourselves we never learned to claim. The erosion has begun. The structure you thought was solid is already crumbling. You tell yourself she changed, that she became distant, cold, indifferent. But what if she didn't change? What if she simply stopped performing the role you unconsciously assigned to her? Jung described this phenomenon as the collapse of the persona, the social mask we wear, to maintain harmony in relationships. At first, she played the role you needed, lover, confidant, caretaker. But personas are unsustainable when they conflict with the authentic self. Over time, the mask became too heavy. Her true self, long suppressed, began to leak through the cracks. And you? You clung to the mask. You wanted her to remain who she was when you first met, frozen in time, embodying the fantasy that filled your emotional void. But no one can maintain that illusion forever. Did you ever ask who she really was? Or did you only see her through the lens of your needs, your wounds, your unspoken demands? Her emotional withdrawal wasn't a conscious strategy. It was a psychological necessity. The more she conformed to your expectations, the more alienated she became from herself. And as Jung taught, when the psyche is split, it rebels. The rebellion begins quietly, with apathy, detachment, silence, but inevitably it demands rupture. By the time you noticed, it was already too late. You saw her physical presence, but her emotional essence had long since vacated the space between you, and here lies the tragic irony. You believed she abandoned you, when in truth you never truly met her. You met only your projection, your ideal, your reflection. This is the unbearable lesson Jung offers, that love is not about possessing another, but about confronting the parts of ourselves that we have hidden in the other. She didn't leave you emotionally because she stopped loving you. She left because she could no longer bear the weight of being your unconscious mirror. The mask has fallen. The real confrontation begins now. You ask yourself, why didn't she tell me? Why didn't she scream or fight or beg me to notice? But emotional departure rarely comes with dramatic declarations. It happens in silence, in subtle withdrawals that go unnoticed by those unwilling to confront discomfort. She didn't tell you because she had already told you 1,000 times in ways you refused to hear. In the way her gaze became distracted, the way she no longer sought your opinion, the way her affection transformed into obligation. These were all silent signals of a love unraveling, but you mistook them for normalcy. Jung warned of this blindness, that the unconscious communicates through symbols, gestures, patterns, not through explicit language. And those who live only, on the surface insulated by their persona, miss these signs until they become catastrophic. You weren't listening, not because you didn't care, but because you were afraid. Afraid to confront the possibility that love could die despite your best intentions. Afraid to admit that something essential was slipping through your fingers. But what exactly was slipping away? Was it her? Or the version of yourself that only existed in relation to her? The man you thought you were when she smiled, when she desired you, when she leaned into your touch. Without her emotional presence, you felt yourself disintegrate. Not because she was your source of life, but because you had unknowingly outsourced your identity to her attention. This is the unconscious dependency Jung described, the tendency to seek wholeness through the other, rather than through the arduous task of individuation. And so, when she began to reclaim herself, when she withdrew emotionally to find her own center, you experienced it as abandonment. But it was never about you. It was about her liberation from a role that suffocated her spirit, yet you felt betrayed, because you mistook her emotional autonomy for rejection. Now you are left with the silence, and within that silence lies a question you cannot escape. Who are you without her? You cling to the narrative that she broke your heart, that she is the villain in this story, the one who walked away, leaving you shattered and confused. But Jung would ask, who truly betrayed whom? Did she betray you by leaving? Or did you betray her long before, by failing to witness her suffering, her longing, her slow emotional decay? The shadow, Jung's most terrifying concept, lurks here, hidden beneath your righteous indignation. The parts of you that refused vulnerability, that avoided intimacy under the guise of strength, that prioritized control over connection. These are the silent architects of the fracture you now grieve. But you don't want to see that. It's easier to paint her as cold, as unfeeling as the one who gave up, because to acknowledge your role would mean confronting the darkest parts of yourself, the apathy, the emotional laziness, the unconscious withdrawal that made her departure not only possible, but inevitable. You told yourself she would never leave, that the history, the shared experiences, the intertwined lives would be enough to hold her. But relationships are not held together by history. They are sustained by presence, by continuous recognition, by the willingness to evolve. And when she no longer felt seen, no longer felt chosen, she began her silent retreat. This is the most brutal truth Jung forces us to confront, that the people we lose often mirror the parts of ourselves we refuse to claim. She was the embodiment of something you abandoned long ago, your capacity for emotional risk, for genuine intimacy, for soulful connection. In losing her, you are confronted with the void you spent years denying. You stand now at a precipice, staring into the abyss not of her absence, but of your own inner emptiness. The question is no longer why she left, but why you allowed the space between you to become so vast, so silent, so dead. You keep replaying the final moments, obsessing over her last words, her last glance, as if they contain the secret code to her departure. But they don't. The real departure happened long before, in the invisible realm of the psyche, where words are useless and instincts reign. Jung taught us that what is not made conscious will manifest as fate, and so her emotional exit was not a choice she made. One morning, it was the inevitable culmination of countless unconscious wounds, unmet needs, and silent compromises. Both yours. And hers. You want to believe that if you had said the right thing, done the right gesture, perhaps she would have stayed. But this is a lie. A comforting illusion that shields you from the far more unsettling truth. That her leaving was not about a single act, but about the gravitational pull of unspoken forces neither of you dared confront. You were both trapped in a mutual projection. She, perhaps, seeing in you the stability she craved, while you saw in her the emotional nourishment. You never learned to give yourself, but projections, as Jung warned, are unstable structures. They eventually collapse under the weight of reality, and when they do, the relationship dies, not because love wasn't present, but because love was built upon illusions. Now, stripped of the projection, you are left with raw absence. No fantasy to cling to, no role to perform, just the cold, unsettling confrontation with your own incompleteness. But there is a hidden opportunity in this devastation. Jung called it individuation, the painful, often lonely process of integrating the disowned parts of the self, of becoming whole without relying on the other as a crutch. Her departure, then, is not merely an ending. It is an invitation to stop seeking your reflection in another and to face, for the first time, the fractured mirror within. The question now is, will you accept this invitation, or will you seek another to repeat the same unconscious pattern, condemning yourself to live this tragedy again and again? You are tempted to numb the pain, to distract yourself with new lovers, with work, with anything that prevents you from sitting in the raw ache of her absence. But Jung warned that what you resist does not disappear. It festers in the dark, growing more powerful, more destructive. You cannot outrun this. The pain you feel is not merely the loss of her, but the exposure of your own emotional inadequacy. The realization that you have never truly cultivated the capacity for authentic connection. You mistook attachment for intimacy, routine for love, presence for attention. But now, stripped of her warmth, you confront the coldness within yourself. This is the encounter with the shadow, not the simplistic villain that sabotaged your relationship, but the neglected parts of your psyche, the boy who feared rejection, the man who chose control over vulnerability, the human who mistook independence for isolation. You wonder why. She couldn't stay and help you heal. But that was never her role. No one can save you from the work that only you can do. She left because her presence was enabling your avoidance, allowing you to outsource your emotional labor onto her. This is the unbearable truth. She left not because you were unworthy of love, but because you were unwilling to face yourself. Her emotional departure was a mirror, reflecting your own disconnection from your inner life. You didn't lose her. You lost the illusion that you could be loved without first loving yourself, without first knowing yourself. Jung insisted that integration, the unification of all parts of the psyche, is the only path to wholeness. But integration demands that you stop blaming her, stop clinging to the narrative of victimhood, and begin the ruthless excavation of your own soul. The pain you feel is not a punishment. It is the precise medicine your unconscious has prescribed. I see. Only question is, will you take it? You tell yourself that time will heal this wound, that with enough distance her memory will fade and life will resume its course. But Jung would warn you, time does not heal what the psyche refuses to confront. Unprocessed pain doesn't dissolve. It calcifies. It embeds itself in your patterns, your choices, your future relationships, ensuring that the same emotional fracture repeats itself in different forms with different faces. If you avoid this confrontation now, you will seek her in others, unconsciously drawn to women who mirror her qualities, hoping this time for a different outcome. But the outcome will not change, because the unresolved within you will dictate your fate. This is the tyranny of the unconscious. It scripts your life from behind the curtain, making you a puppet of patterns you neither recognize nor understand. Jung called this the process of repetition compulsion, a psychic loop in which we recreate the very wounds we failed to heal, mistaking familiarity for love and trauma for destiny. You say you want love, but do you truly want connection, or merely the anesthetic of another, presence to fill the void she left behind? This is the moment of choice, to continue sleepwalking through relationships, recycling the same unconscious projections, or to awaken, to descend into the underworld of your own psyche, to face the demons you have exiled there, and to emerge transformed. But make no mistake, this descent will not be romantic, nor easy. It will feel like death, because in a sense it is, the death of the self you constructed to survive, the self that was dependent on her emotional presence to feel real. And yet, only through this symbolic death can something new be born. A self that is no longer defined by the need to be loved, but by the capacity to love from a place of wholeness. The question remains, will you continue running from your pain, or will you allow it to be the catalyst for your metamorphosis? You wonder now, was any of it real? The love, the connection, the promises whispered in the dark, or was it all just projection? An elaborate fantasy woven from the threads of your unmet needs and unhealed wounds? Jung would tell you, it was both. The relationship was real, but so was the fantasy. Both coexisted, layered upon each other in a complex tapestry of conscious affection and unconscious longing. You didn't just love her for who she was. You loved her for who she allowed you to be in her presence, for the reflection she offered of the man you wished to become. But here lies the fatal flaw. When your sense of self is tethered to another's gaze, their emotional withdrawal feels like annihilation, not simply rejection, but a fracturing of identity itself. This is the cost of unconscious relationships. They bind us not through genuine communion, but through mutual projections, fragile and volatile. And when those projections shatter, as they inevitably must, we are left with the unbearable task of facing ourselves, stripped of illusion, bereft of the roles that once gave us purpose. You ask, why does it hurt so much? Because it is not only her absence you are mourning, but the death of the self that existed only in relation to her. The self that never had to stand alone, never had to confront its own emptiness, never had to ask, who am I, when there is no one left to mirror me? Jung's path of individuation begins precisely here, in the ruins of lost love, in the ashes of identity collapse. Only when the false self dies can the true self begin to emerge. But this emergence is not guaranteed. Many retreat into bitterness, into cynicism, erecting walls to prevent future pain, thus ensuring permanent exile from authentic connection. You stand now at that crossroads. Will you entomb yourself in the narrative of the betrayed? Or will you walk naked through the flames of your own shadow, forging a new, integrated self from the wreckage? This is the final truth, the one you've resisted all along. She did not leave you. She freed you. Not from love, but from the illusion of love that you had mistaken for salvation. From the fantasy that another's presence could complete what you refuse to complete within yourself. From the lie that wholeness is something to be given, rather than something to be forged. Jung warned that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Her departure was not fate. It was the manifestation of all that you left unseen, unloved and unintegrated within your own psyche. She was the catalyst, not the cause. And now, you are left with the most terrifying and liberating realization. There is no one coming to save you. No lover, no friend, no savior can do the work that is yours alone. The path before you is solitary, arduous, and dark. It demands that you confront your shadow, that you dismantle your persona, that you cease projecting your inner feminine, the anima, onto women who are not responsible for completing you. It demands that you abandon the childish hope for rescue and embrace the adult task of individuation, integrating your fragmented psyche into a whole, authentic self. This is not the end of your story. It is the threshold. You can choose to recoil, to retreat into familiar patterns, seeking again the comfort of projection and the numbing safety of unconsciousness. Or you can step forward, into the unknown, into the fire of your own transformation, into the alchemical process that burns away the false and reveals what is real. She left you emotionally before she left physically, not to punish you, but to awaken you. Now the only question that remains, will you answer that call? The journey is yours. The choice is yours.